Whawhatai Lava.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Te lofa lava, Mr Speaker, and to the House as well. This evening, as we debate the budget, this evening as we actually set out our particular views on how New Zealand's going, I want to convey to the House the view of the constituents in my electorate. The constituents of Rangitata responded to the budget in very even measure. The reports in the paper, generally speaking, said this is a sensible, strong budget, a budget that continues down a sensible path without rocking the boat, because actually New Zealand's been through some very rocky couple of years. It would appear to me that the opposition members around the House have little or no comprehension of the actual effects of the global financial crisis. If I was to comment on some of the speakers that have preceded me, I would still shake my head in wonderment at the stories of monkeys and spraying cold water. The incomprehensible analogies the New Zealand First member treated the House to tonight were interspersed with stories about cuts to police budgets, which bear no resemblance to the facts. In fact, under this government, we have 5.9% drop in recorded crime, 18 new public safety laws passed, 6,000 families protected by police safety orders, a personal favourite of mine. It adds an extra tool to the toolbox to protect women and children in their homes, and a record number of prisoners engaged in training. Now, these particular foursome I'm going to describe as part of a theme of the national government. We are not continually spending more and more and more money throwing lollies at the electorate. In fact, what we as a government are doing under the stewardship of John Key and our Finance Minister is making sure that the money that the members of this House have paid in taxes, that the members of my constituency have paid in taxes, are treated with the respect that that money deserves. That money deserves to be spent wisely, sensibly, carefully, because it does not belong to the government. It belongs to the people of New Zealand. So we have had many successes that it appears the member for the New Zealand First Party is unaware of. So we have seen crime fall by 17% in my own electorate. That's phenomenal. And I tell you what, that's about police on the beat, police on the streets, smart police working with their community, getting fantastic results. This government has introduced technology to the police, so there are thousands and thousands more hours of police work being done out in the community instead of back at the office. We are a very different government to the previous government. As I've said, we don't throw the money around, we try and make it work better for us. The member who spoke prior to me ascribes to the old Labour doctrine: the government solves everything, the government builds everything that needs to be built, the government creates every job that's worthy of having, but actually, guess what? Jobs created by governments are not sustainable jobs. Jobs created by businesses that are growing are sustainable jobs. The previous government controlled business. The previous government wants to control the marketplace with borrow, with tax, with spend, and for good measure with their partners in crime, the Green Party. They're going to print money as well. Their ill-thought-out and rushed policies from the far-left bloc, Labour and the Greens, are transparently vote-seeking missiles. But the one thing about that is the vote-seeking missiles are heading for heat, and I tell you what, the electorate is not showing them any heat. In fact, they indeed are cold to their ideas. So under National, we are concentrating on 4 main themes, and I'm going to repeat them because New Zealanders are coming to understand that this truly is what is important to New Zealand. Responsibly managing the government's finances, I've given examples already. A more competitive and productive economy grows jobs in the economy. We've had the global financial crisis. That crisis has in fact dampened much in New Zealand, but we are no longer on that path to destruction that we were under a Labour government, where we had at least 10 years of deficits, and we're looking at a horrendous debt for the children that follow me and the members of this House. In delivering better public services, we are looking at fine-tuning and addressing all of the money we spend and making sure that we get a very good deal with it. When it comes to rebuilding Christchurch, our second largest city, and in fact the largest city in the South Island and so close to my home electorate, we are completely committed to that. There is a lot of job growth happening in Christchurch, but from my own personal perspective, I'm disturbed that the job growth is happening mainly for men, and so the work that I'm doing with Ministry of Women's Affairs is to zero in on finding more jobs and encouraging women into non-traditional trades, into some of the jobs that the rebuild is creating. I do now want to spend a little bit of time actually talking about the health budget and what the health budget is actually doing for New Zealanders. There's been a huge change in the health sector. And the huge change I can put down, I think, to a couple of things. First of all, the Health Minister's better, sooner, more convenient theme, which is now right across the health sector. But also, part of that is actually about involving clinicians in the decisions. And what we've seen as a result of that is we've seen a phenomenal impact on what has actually been achieved within the health sector. So we've been delivering the sort of health care that matters most to New Zealanders. And at the same time, New Zealanders have responded by becoming more and more secure in their knowledge that the health sector works for them. So 35,000 more elective surgeries this year than there were in 2008. Free visits to the doctor for under 6s, day or night. Now, the immunisation one is indeed one of my favourites, as it was Dr Hutchison's. 93% of 2-year-olds fully immunised, up from 74% back in 2008. But actually, it's not so long ago, under the previous government, it was 67%. There's 1,000 more doctors, 2,000 more nurses. But even more important, we've got those 45,000 children at nearly 200 schools taking part in the rheumatic fever prevention program. Rheumatic fever was apparently a priority under the previous government. It's just that nothing happened during that time. In New Zealand these days, if you are going to receive, if a patient is going to receive chemotherapy or radiotherapy, then they get it in New Zealand. Far gone are the days when they travelled to Australia more often than we cared to admit. There are 56,000 more well-child visits and 24/7 funding for Plunket Line. When I talked to Plunket in my electorate recently, they asked me what they could do better, and I said the only time anyone talks to me about Plunket, I never get any complaints. The only time I ever hear anything at a public meeting, it's, can we have more of Plunket? So they indeed are absolutely delighted that this government funded Plunket Line 24/7. I believe it was Helen Clark that cut it. 56,000 more well-child visits. And then we've also got the amazing turnaround. No longer do we have beds in corridors in emergency departments. Sometimes patients on those beds, on those trolleys really, for days at a time. Now we have 93% of patients in emergency departments seen treated or discharged within 6 hours. But this budget brought more. 14.7 billion total health spending, that's up. 1.6 billion extra for new initiatives and to meet population pressures, $70 million for aged care and dementia services, and even more money, 48 million more for elective operations. We're concentrating on the non-surgical aspects as well, with more money, $35.5 million for heart disease and diabetes checks. Then the screening, my own particular responsibility, an extra $25 million for preventive screening services such as breast cancer screening. This government is doing its level best to use the public of New Zealand's taxpayer funds to the very, very best effect. And New Zealanders are not missing out. Today's announcements for vulnerable children, the money we are spending on vulnerable families means this government and this budget is entirely for all New Zealanders, not just some. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member, the whistle wall, Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker.